You must be Whitney.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Clay. It's good to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So welcome to your first session. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more, maybe talk about what you're going through. So I read through what you provided us, and I just want to hear from you. What is it that you are going through right now? What are you dealing with?
I'd say I'm dealing with a lot of turmoil at my house, specifically family-wise with my husband and my children. Just not communicating, just not feeling like I belong there. Just an overall lack of happiness, I'd say there.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any? You have children, yes?
Mm-hmm. I have 2 kids.
Okay, and how are those relationships?
I'd say that my relationship with my son has been definitely downhill. Because I don't get very much along with his father right now, he is like spitting image of his father in the way that he acts, and the way that he, treats me and behaves, so it's hard for me to connect with him.
What behaviors does your husband and son, what behaviors do they exhibit that you find frustrating or difficult to work with?
I'd say that my husband just overall doesn't care about me. He doesn't listen to me. I just struggle there because we argue all the time, and there is no reprieve because he just never can see my side of the situation. And I would say that he really is wrong in a lot of the things that he does, and so because he is refusing to listen to me, it just makes it difficult to even have a relationship with him. And my son just is following suit in that and acting in the same ways, and so I can't really talk to my son. He doesn't listen to me in that way either.
Are there any strengths that you see in your husband? Any strengths you see him exhibit?
I'd say it's hard to see those strengths right now just because we've been fighting for so long, and because there is such a lack of love in this relationship to me, from my perspective. So I would say it's hard for me to see any good in it right now.
And what about your son? Is that the same? Do you struggle to see strengths in what your son does?
I do. I think, he's my son, so obviously I hope that it can get better, but I don't really see very many positives in our relationship either.
So tell me a little bit about your family history. Are there any patterns in your family's history that, whether it's substance abuse, divorce, relational issues, anything you've noticed?
So substance abuse is one for sure my family has dealt with. I just see that wreck relationships and wreck lives over the course of the years growing up. When I was growing up, my father left our family, so it was just me and my mom, and honestly, I just have dealt with that, but also not remembered a lot of it. I don't really remember specifically a lot of my childhood. I just remember that it wasn't good.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Do you, and this may be an unusual question, but have you experienced any sort of dreams or daydreams maybe that you're dealing with or have had as a recurring pattern in your life?
I mean, now that you mention it, I guess I have. There's like this dream that I get every so often where I just like wake up and I'm on an island and there's like nobody around, and then they're just cluttered with trash and empty bottles and things, and I just feel like lonely and sad, I would say.
Well, I have a small just exercise I'd like to do with you before we move on. I'm going to list a few words, and I don't want you to think too deeply. I just want you to say what comes to mind right away. So I'll say these words. You give me 2 or 3 things that immediately come to mind, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So when I say the word home, what do you think of?
I just think broken and not good.
Broken and not good. What about when I say the word relationships?
Probably hard. It's like the first thing that comes to mind. Just overall hard.
What about the word work? What do you think of?
Definitely like reprieve is one of the first words that comes to mind. A lot, definitely.
What about power?
Power. Probably insecurity and I don't know. I can't really think of anything else.
Are there any themes that you notice through any of these 4 words that I've asked you?
I don't know. Probably just, but based on what we talked about earlier, it's just definitely the pattern of the home not really feeling like a safe space. And if I can't find reprieve at my house, then if it's at work, then I feel like that could be a pattern.
Do you find yourself at work often, more often maybe than the average American?
I definitely work more than overtime. I provide a lot for my family and for my kids, so I do work a lot. And I don't know if there's anything really bad in that as a working woman and wife that wants to provide for her family. But yeah, I do work a lot.
Do you find yourself turning to any other things, maybe for a reprieve from your issues at home?
I mean, I like to hang out with people from work. I like to hang out with my friends. We do like occasionally drink together for sure. But I would say I don't really turn to them to escape home, really. It's just to have a good time and actually be happy.
How often would you say that you drink?
We'll go out, after the office hours. Definitely a few times a week.
Do you find yourself often drinking alone or at home?
Yeah, I would say my husband doesn't really approve of the alcohol, so if I do want to drink at home and just have a glass of wine and like unwind from the stress of the kids and of my husband, then yeah, I'll drink at home alone.
And how often would you say you do that in an average week?
I don't know, probably just a few times.
A few times. And are those the same nights you're also going out, or are those different?
It just depends on the kids' schedules and everything.
Yeah. So what is your end goal? What do you want to see your family become?
I just want to see my family become kind of just united, I guess. Like, I don't want to come and feel like I don't belong in my own family. And I want to see us get to a place where we can all be happy together, living together. And I know families aren't perfect, but just to where it isn't so hostile and we can just be a happy, united family together.
Do you think that, you've mentioned you have a family history of substance abuse, you have a reoccurring dream surrounded by empty bottles. Do you feel like any of the things or any of your behaviors might be negatively impacting what that end goal is?
Probably not. I mean, I don't see how alcohol could really play a role in that, because I'm not a different person when I go out and have drinks with my friends or drink at home. I'm the same, and it doesn't make me bad. I don't miss events for my kids. I'm not a bad mom, I always try to be there. It's just, I just do it to, feel happiness and feel joy, so I don't really see how that could be bad.
Well, I think one of the things that we'll need to just work through together is looking at your defense mechanisms. And I see a number of potential defense mechanisms that you may be using in order to not have to deal with some of those difficult circumstances at home. One of those is displacement. It seems like for many of the issues at home, your husband, as well as your son, may be your scapegoats for some of your feelings. In the therapy world, we call that splitting, where you only see the negative in someone else instead of seeing all of the positive attributes that they may have, right? It's it can be easy for us sometimes to see, especially when a person has hurt us or had a large negative influence on our lives, to only see the bad in the person and not to see the good, right? You mentioned that you don't have any issues with your daughter. And so we have to understand that being humans and living in a human condition, your husband is not all bad, your daughter is not all good, we're mixed, right? And so one of the things I'd like you to work on for the next session is I really would like you to write a list of strengths that you see in your spouse, as well as a list of strengths you see in your son. And that might be difficult and challenging, and it might challenge a bit of denial that you're facing, right? That your spouse or your child do have good attributes, even when it's difficult to see. And another thing I'd like to ask you to do is to really be intentional about recording how often you drink and how many hours you're spending at work. And because I think oftentimes, if we're not careful, we could be turning to work or substances, especially when we have a significant history, instead of dealing with our problems. We turn to things to try and comfort ourselves through those issues. Okay?
Okay.
And then I'd just like to ask, what is your biggest fear?
Probably just to end up alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that has any influence on maybe the dream that you've been having?
I mean, it could for sure. I haven't had the best history of, people staying with me and in my life, so.
Right. And I think often what we find is that there are historical family patterns of dysfunction. And so when we are raised in an environment of abandonment and potentially have familial patterns of those behaviors, we can very much internalize and express those in our own way. And of course, there's also the idea of how we cope with those issues, right? There are a multitude of ways to cope, but what I hear you saying is you want a good relationship with your spouse.
Yeah.
And I hear you say that you want a good relationship with both of your children.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me how your behaviors of work and drinking promote that vision that you have.
I mean, I feel like the drinking, it just makes me have a better relationship with myself. I don't know if drinking necessarily makes you have a better relationship with others, but if it makes me happy, then I can be better for my kids. Is, I guess, how I viewed it in the past. But with work, I mean, just at a basic level, like providing for them.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't work, then, how can you really be there for your family in that way?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's how I viewed it. Work.
Well, during our time together, right, I'd love to have the rest of your family in our sessions. So please, I encourage you to bring them. But, in my role as a therapist, I just want to encourage you that even if you didn't have a parent growing up, you can still be a successful parent. You still can raise great kids and be a great spouse. And I think that there is an opportunity here to stir your family interactions as a catalyst, and to maybe shake things up, and in doing so, overcome some challenges and work through some conflicts together. It won't be a short road, but I think it will be a rewarding and worthwhile one. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening.